Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast battle report. Today, sabotage as the quest for liquid flesh continues. The Dark Eldar face off against the Necron tier in this barren wasteland. Let's begin. And we are back, episode 2 of the Tales of Liquid Flesh. So this is a story, a narrative series of games that follows Archon Skari versus the Necrons of the Anomanek dynasty, which means no name, or nameless, essentially. And the first battle was a planetfall. The Dark Eldar have successfully landed on the planet, and now they are trying to sneak up and sabotage an ancient crystal buried beneath the sands. The Necrons have activated their defense circuits, and tides of the Canoptek spiders and Canoptek scarabs will be thrown wave on wave to stop the Dark Eldar attack. So this is a sabotage objective. If you want to see Mission 1, check the link down below for the start of our campaign. Let's go on to the two armies, 1,500 points of Dark Eldar, 1,500 points of Necrons, and we will return. Okay, so here is 1,500 points of Dark Eldar for the hunt for liquid flesh. Okay, so it is the same list as our first battle. I am not allowed to change my army, as I won the last game, and that represents my army's supply lines going thin. So the defender can kind of modify their list a little bit as the campaign goes on. So, as a refresher in the players in the story, I've got Archon Skari. He has his Court of the Archon with a Lamian, an Urgul, a Medusa, and a Slith. He also has 5 of his trusted Incubi with a Clavex. We also have air support in the form of a Razorwing Jet Fighter, a Raider, 17 Witches with 3 Witch Weapons and an Agonizer Gauntlet in there, or an Agonizer, sorry, in there. Helping the Cult of the Bloodied Blade, we have 2 units of Reaver jet bikes there. They were pivotal in the landfall, getting up there, getting close. The Succubus, 10 unit of Helions. And for the planetfall, I had them as one big 20-man unit, but to change the Planet Strike attacker into a battalion, I've just split that unit up into 2 10-man units of Cabalite Warriors. So that is 15. Oh, and of course a Ravager. Sorry. Can't forget the Ravagers. Haven't used them in a while. Been playing a lot of Eldar lately. But will Archon Skari and his cavalcade be able to sabotage the objective, or will the Necron defense forces thwart his attempt at deactivating parts of the tomb complex? Okay, so these are the Necron forces arrayed to defend the crystal. So John, why don't you go over what you've decided to take in your sabotage defender list?
Well, I figured since the planetary defenses have come, we have brought in the Canoptek auto defenses, bringing in 30 swarms of scarabs.
30 scarab bases. Awesome.
We have a tomb spider who's big papa daddy of the scarabs to help along.
Yeah.
2 overlords and a lord.
Yeah.
With their loyal Lichguard servants to bring up the rear.
Yeah.
A couple of annihilation barges because they are nicely automated.
Yeah.
And 2 death marks because
5 and 5.
5 and 5.
Ready to try and snipe out Archon Skari. And then you do get 10 sentries. So we've gone for 10 immortals with Gauss blasters as the sentries. Okay, and now we're moving on to deployment. Okay, so this is a sabotage mission. We have the crystal beneath the sands, right in the middle of the battlefield. This section here is where the attacker deploys, and we have 10 sentries all the way around. John has used a command point to add 3 inches to all the distances that he can spot me. So all my guys here can be normally spotted within 6 inches for the Cavalry Warriors because they're bigger units, and within 3 inches for the other units, like the Incubi and stuff like that. So now we can spot them within 6 inches and can spot them within 9 inches. So I do get to go first, but the aim is it's random game length. I have to try and get models within 3 inches of that sabotage objective, units within 3 inches, and then put a sabotage counter. And when the game ends, I roll a dice and add +1 for each sabotage counter on the crystal. If I roll a 7 or more, I have successfully sabotaged and I win. Anything else is a loss. Now, I could have put my entire army on the board, but it doesn't make sense to have a raider and a bunch of stuff coming in. So I've decided to keep most of my army in reserve. The Flyer, the Ravager, the Jet Bikes, the Witches, essentially all the cult units, as Archon Skari is now going on a personal little escapade. He's personally trying to go and do this job by himself. It's risky business, but he likes this little side quest all for himself. He wants the glory. So let me know what you think down below. Have you ever played this mission? Looking forward to seeing what happens. Other than that, all the Necron units are in reserve. As soon as the alarm is sounded, the Necrons will be coming in. And he also gets to keep any sentries that are alive as part of his army as well. Okay. So, John, have a fantastic game, sir.
Good luck.
Good luck. And with that, the quest for liquid flesh continues. And the Dark Eldar take the first turn. Dark Eldar sneaking around, turn 1. The flank with Archon Skari has moved around. I used a stratagem to silence the Cavalite Warriors' weapons, and they eliminated 1 sentry. Quietly, don't tell them we're here. On the other flank, the other unit of Cavalite Warriors has kind of moved aside, getting further away from the Necrons. We're moving on to sentry movement. Now, the way this works is we roll a dice for each sentry. So, John rolls a dice, I roll a dice. And whoever wins gets to move the sentry that amount of inches in any direction that they want. So, I can, say, move them away from me, and he can try set them up so they're all kind of supporting each other and moving towards me to set off the alarm, because I have to try and get there, and if I don't get a sabotage point, I lose. So, this is getting exciting already. It's like a mini game before the game even starts, and then when the battle is joined, it's going to be fast and furious. Okay, let's see what happens with these sentries. Okay, so the sentries turn 1. He won the roll off for this one, so he moved him this way. I won the roll off for this one, so I moved him back that way. He won the roll off for this one, moved him this way. I won the roll off for the one here, moved him that way. I won the roll off for that one, moved him that way. I won the roll off for that one, moved him that way. I won the roll off for that one, moved him that way. That one stayed put, and I won the roll off for this one and moved him this way. So apparently the sentries weren't really paying much attention to what was going on. So it is important for me to try and get there as quickly as possible. It is going on to turn 2, and it's random game length, so it's forcing me to be rather aggressive. I'm going to have to get in there to try to do some damage, but now there's a line of sentries up here, and I could probably peck him off next turn. But, you know, we're shooting, and then I'm going to have to do a gamble or something on turn 3. So we shall see as Archon Skari leads his sneaky expedition. Dark Eldar sneaking around, turn 2. So, I moved up the Incubi. They charged into that Immortal and killed him in combat. So because he didn't survive the combat, the alarm has not been raised. I did move the Cavalite Warriors into the cover here, and just in case, so they're covered. And Archon Skari and his retinue are moving ever so closer. This unit on the far flank fired into the sentry that was right here using silenced weapons and did nuke him as well. So we're moving on to sentries turn 2. So let's see, if he gets a good roll on either of these, he'll be able to spot my incubi and probably even my Cavalite warriors. So let's see what happens. So tense. Okay, so sentries turn 2 and the alarm has been sounded. He rolled first rolled a 6 for that sentry. He moves right up. Normally can only see me within 3 inches, but he has the extended Auspex scanning. Adds 3 inches, so he's within 6. Notices my Cavalite warriors on the flank. Oh no, they weren't as sneaky. Immediately sets off the alarm. So we basically restart the turn. It's turn 2. And all the defenders will start coming in from reserve. So he has to roll on a 3+ for each of his units. And they come in on any of his board edges, essentially, that are more than the distance from my units. But all the sentries revert to his control, and they're essentially models that he can use. And now the game is truly on. Archon Skari's sneaky stuff was foiled by some Saberite and their unruly bunch in the flank there. Bollocks. Okay, on to turn. Let's actually roll. Let's see what comes in, shall we? And we'll roll it so that we know what arrives. So we've got a lot of stuff arriving from as the reserves.
All right. First things first. I feel.
Okay.
Unit 1 of the Scarabs.
9 unit of Scarabs arrives.
And it's in.
Okay.
Unit 9 of Scarabs.
9 of Scarabs arrives.
Unit 6 of Scarabs.
6 of Scarabs does not arrive.
6 of Scarabs
arrives.
Annihilation Barge
arrives.
Annihilation Barge
arrives.
Spider
does not arrive.
Lich Guard.
By the way, he's rolling over here. It arrives?
It arrives.
Cool.
Overlord.
First Overlord arrives.
Lord
arrives.
Other Overlord.
Second Overlord arrives.
And I'm going to keep the 2 squads of Death Marks in reserve.
Perfect. Okay, so he is coming in with almost his entire army as the alarm is sounded, and the Necrons are quick to come to the aid of the sentries. They were prepared for the Dark Eldar to try and move on the crystal. They knew its importance, and they respond in turn. On to turn 2 again for the Necrons. Okay, so we've got the Necrons arriving and all the sentries essentially becoming aware of their impending doom. So we had 9 Scarabs, Annihilation Barge, an Overlord and a Lord, shoot down into these Cavalite warriors, killed 7 of them. But they rolled a 1 for their morale, so they are okay, because Archon Skari's watching them with a watchful eye. These couple of the Gauss Blasters fired in at -2 AP, nuking 2 of the Incubi, and then that entire unit died. Well, there were a few left, and they all ran away, because Archon Skari's over here, and they decided to go home. So, with that, the battle is joined, and we're moving on to the Dark Eldar 3rd turn. So I get to move up, and then my reserves, I can bring as many of them as I want on, as long as they're within 6 inches of my board edge. So I got the Reaver Jet Bikes, the Ravager, the Razorwing, the Witches, the Hellions. So, you know, there's lots of stuff that can happen now as we try and push. He's like, he calls in, he radios in. Archon Skari's like, whoa, they found us. Send help. Send support. And the clock is ticking. It's turn 3, and I have to get back to this objective marker. So let's see what happens after this. Dark Eldar, turn 3, sees the rest of the Dark Eldar force arrive within 6 inches of the board edge. So they're trying to help Archon Skari as he's moving towards. Hopefully it's on time so that they don't all get murdered. Some shooting, so a few of the immortal sentries die, and a few of the Scarab bases died to some blaster and lance fire. I essentially ignored the big barges because they have quantum shielding, and quantum shielding is silly against lances, like high damage weapons. And then the Incubi failed their charge, even with their re-rolling charges. They were trying to get the first sabotage in near the objective, but it was not to be. So we're moving on to the third Necron turn, and now the death marks and the other scarabs arrive from reserve as well. Will the Dark Eldar be able to sabotage the crystal, or will the Necrons safeguard their power source? We shall see as we return. Okay, so turn 3 for the Necrons. We had another blob of scarabs with the Tomb Spider show up, and then the Annihilation Barge on both sides moved up, and they know they have to try and take out the fast-moving elements that can sabotage the objective. So he killed 3 of one unit, and the other unit passed all its saves, which was very lucky. In combat, or sorry, more shooting, the Immortals that were sentries that were left murdered all the Incubi, together with some Staff of Lights. And then the Scarabs charged in, killed the unit of warriors, put a wound on the Slith, and the death marks, 1 unit death marks dropped down, shot into Skari. 1 wound got through, and Skari failed his Shadow Field save. So he's now running around with no Shadow Field. So we're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 4. It's time to start getting some sabotage objectives, or else this is going to be a very tough last couple of turns as the tides and tides of scarabs try and stop the Drukhari from doing some damage. Let's see what the Dark Eldar can do as the game comes to its epic-y conclusion. And Archon Skari is tied in combat and can't really go and do anything about it. On to turn 4. Okay, and we come back after Dark Eldar turn 4. Much has happened. The Urgul and the Lamian both were able to charge behind the death marks and put sabotage objectives on the crystal. The Urgul has taken a wound, and I have used another command point to give my Lamian additional explosives, which means she will attempt to sabotage again if she survives the next Necron turn, which is going to be forcing him to deal with her. I charged my Hellions into this guy and did 6 out of 8 wounds. I did lose 4 from the Tesla Overwatch, which was nasty. And then the giant unit of witches ran in and murdered all the scarabs. Power from Pain is really fun when you get to hit on 2s and you have a succubus that lets you reroll 1s in combat. And then on the far flank, my Ravager has charged into the scarabs to stop them from charging this turn, which is pretty cool. Just going to safeguard them. But now let's see what happens. As the game moves on to turn 4, I have 2 sabotage objectives, which means I need to roll a 5 or more in order to win the game at the end of the game. And John can force me to reduce that number by 1. So right now it's looking, I'd have to roll a 6 to win. So it'd be very, very tight. Okay, what do the Necrons do? Let's find out as this is turning into an all-right brawl. Okay, so we're looking at turn 4 for the Necrons. The Necrons have consolidated their power around the crystal, killing the 2 characters. The screen of scarabs has done just that, screened my movement forward, while a Tomb Spider survived 1 wound left to hold the Hellions in place without them being able to jump over and charge in to sabotage the objective. And this Annihilation Barge has also charged in to stop me from boosting all the way up with his super boost and getting another sabotage point. So we're moving on to turn 5 for the Dark Eldar. I am surrounded, trying to push through, still have a chance to do it, but it's looking grim. Let's see what happens after this. Dark Eldar turn 5. Wow, things are getting bloody. So my succubus moved and charged into the little spider, then consolidated into these 2 units of scarabs, took 2 wounds after taking like 28 attacks, which was crazy. She survived, holding them up in combat. The Hellions have a special rule. They can fall back, shoot, and charge after they fall back. So they were able to charge in and sabotage the objective. But they are probably going to die this turn. There's only 4 of them left. Archon Skari charged in, took another wound from the death marks. The Slith, the Witches, all charged into death marks. And the Scarabs, there's 1 Scarab base left. 3 death marks left. That Ravager charged into both those Immortals to stop them from shooting this turn. I was unable to do anything against the barges because quantum shielding is awesome. And then this Raider charged into death marks to stop them from shooting. And my Reaver jet bikers kind of moved this way just to stay alive. So we're moving on to turn 5. Could be the end of the game. I was able to put 1 more sabotage objective marker on the... So right now I need to roll a 5. A 4. If I roll a 4, I win. It's a 4+. Of course, John still has... he can still -1 to that. So technically it's a 5. So 5+, a 1 in 3 chance the Dark Eldar have been successful at this point. If the game ends, we shall see, as now the Lich Guard are going to be at the forefront to try and stem the tide of the Dark Eldar onslaught. Okay, moving on to turn 5. Necron, turn 5. So we had the Succubus die to a lot of Scarabs. The 3 Lords charged into the Slith and Archon Skari, murdering them both. The Lich Guard charged into the Witches together with the Annihilation Barges. The Witches survived with their dodgy and vulnerable saves. The Medusa is fine. I did lose the... there was a couple of Immortals that shot up at the jet bike and he died. Nothing happened in that combat. Nothing happened in that combat. Nothing happened to this flyer here. But that is turn 5. He has effectively stopped me from really being able to get any more of those coveted points, as the Medusa would have to wade through all this and the Witches would have to kind of weave their way through. Very, very unlikely. So, John, do the honors and see if the game continues on to turn 6. The game does. It goes on to turn 6. Okay, let's see what happens. Dark Eldar, turn 6. Nothing much happened. I killed a few Immortals with shooting. I did kill these death marks. And then my Medusa moved up and charged a really long way to get and kill that Immortal in combat, which is really crazy. She did get heroically intervened by an Overlord. The Overlord whiffed terribly, only put 1 wound. Therefore, I was able to sabotage it again. My Medusa sabotaged the crystal. So now we're moving on to Necron turn 6. My Witches all survived again because 4+ dodge saves in combat are amazing. Okay, Necrons, what will you do? Okay, so Necron turn 6. Medusa died, fell back with the Annihilation Barges, murdered all the Witches because my Witches were trying to hold the Lich Guard in combat. They were like, no, and that didn't happen. And then everything else, 1 wound on the Ravager. But other than that, I've done what I can with the sabotage objective. I put 4 sabotage points on the objective. I have vehicles only left, which do not allow me to get sabotage objectives. But so other than that, I guess we'll just roll, sir. Okay. Okie dokie. So I get +4. I need a 7.
I will cash my 1 command point to reduce the roll by 1.
Okay, so I get +3.
So you need a 4+.
I need a 4+. Okay, you ready for this? It all comes down. We've played for a couple hours just for this 1 dice roll, and the roll is a 5. Oh no! John, thanks for the game. That was fantastic. So close. I cannot believe, like, that Medusa. Well, you know, that Medusa really kind of made it easier for me. But any final comments for the game?
Well done.
Thank you. Ah, sabotage stuff. Sneaky Dark Eldar at it again. So, what did you think of the game?
Oh, this was one of the most fun games that I've ever played. It started, it was any man's game, and it came down to a dice roll. This anybody who's never played this mode before, you should definitely give it a shot. This was fun start to finish on both sides.
Yeah, playing narrative missions are really fun. It's always good to kind of plan with your opponent before, have an idea of what sort of narrative you want to create. You know, spend a couple hours rolling some dice, having some fun, and creating some cool stories. So thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Check the links down below. Get some exclusives by signing up on the Patreon page and supporting the channel and being a part of the Spires of the Dark City. As the denizens of the Dark City, as we call ourselves. And check all the links, as well as the first battle report in our series. Archon Skari has been felled. He has fallen. But let's see if it's going to be closer to him getting liquid flesh. Nevertheless, the Necrons are unabated, and they did stem the tide, doing heavy damage to the Dark Eldar attackers. Join us next time on the next episode. Skari, out. It's an exclusive. We're playing the game. Lots of shooting.